Civilization began with agriculture. When our nomadic ancestors began to settle and grow their own food, human society was forever changed. Not only did villages, towns, and cities begin to flourish, but so did knowledge, the arts, and the technological sciences. Hunger, health, a growing population, the need to farm sustainably, these are some of the issues facing our planet. In the next 50 years, the world must produce more food than in the last 10,000. But we're currently using resources 50% faster than the planet can sustain. Now, how do companies like Syngenta meet the challenge while protecting nature, helping people in rural communities live better lives, and satisfying consumers who demand greater variety, quality, and quantity of food? By developing products through world-class science, global reach, and commitment to their customers to increase crop productivity, protect the environment, and improve health and quality of life. Syngenta is a multi-billion-dollar global agribusiness enterprise that develops and sells genetically modified corn seed, herbicides, and pesticides. Biotechnology sits at the heart of this industry. It holds great promise but can also cause great harm. Biotechnology companies such as Syngenta must act responsibly when commercializing new products containing genetically modified traits. Syngenta provides products and solutions to help farmers achieve global food security for a growing population sustainably. They work by looking at agriculture through the eyes of growers and by applying world-class science to develop crop protection products and seeds. Their innovations help farmers to overcome multiple challenges, from weeds, insects, and disease to the effects of heat and cold on crops. Whether they grow corn or rice, vegetables or coffee, farmers around the world have trusted Syngenta to help them produce healthy, premium crops and minimize the use of precious natural resources. All industry participants, including Syngenta, have pledged and understand that irresponsible commercialization of a new genetically modified product can cause major trade disruption and massive harm to both producers and non-producers. Syngenta broke that pledge. Starting in 2010, it took unreasonable and irresponsible actions to launch 2 new products containing genetically modified traits before obtaining approval from China, a key export market. These actions caused the Chinese market to be effectively closed to U.S. shipments. In this insider-exclusive investigative network TV show, our news team goes behind the headlines in Syngenta sued by 60,000 plus corn producers and related businesses, what you need to know. To examine how Spencer Shield, partner at the Shields Law Group LLC, is getting justice for U.S. farmers and businesses by holding Syngenta responsible for the billions of dollars of losses suffered by U.S. corn producers and non-producers as a direct result of Syngenta's irresponsible conduct. The lawsuit states that Syngenta represented repeatedly that China would approve MIR 162 in March 2012, even though it knew that approval in that time frame was extremely unlikely. But contrary to claims made by Syngenta to farmers and others in the agribusiness, China did not grant regulatory approval to MIR 162 when Syngenta publicly stated it did. Syngenta made false representations about the effect of the Chinese market on the global corn market and about measures it would take to prevent genetically altered crops from contaminating other crops. So, imagine you are one of 60,000 U.S. farmers and industry-related businesses who invested all it took to produce a corn crop for shipment overseas to China. And then after you've done all your work, you find out your efforts were wasted because the corn wasn't approved or wanted. That's the basic story behind the Syngenta corn seed litigation now in progress. In fact, not only are 60,000 plus agricultural producers and non-producers suing Syngenta, but 2 of the world's biggest commodity traders, Cargill and Archer Daniels Midland, filed lawsuits against Syngenta. Spencer Shields has earned the highest respect from citizens and lawyers lawyers alike as one of the best trial lawyers in Kansas and Missouri and across the nation. He has built a substantial reputation nationwide by consistently winning cases other law firms have turned down. And his amazing courtroom skills and headline-grabbing success rate continue to provide his clients with the results they need and the results they deserve. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Kansas City, Missouri. It is my great pleasure to introduce Spencer Shields to the show. Welcome to the show, Spencer.
How you doing, Steve?
We are here today talking a little bit about your firm, but mainly about a case that a lot of people have a lot of issues with, which is genetically modified seeds. Tell our audience a little bit about what practice of law your firm practices.
I have been a civil tort lawyer, primarily doing personal injury, consumer-type cases, mass tort litigation.
Yes.
For approximately 20 years in the Kansas City metropolitan area.
Mm-hmm.
We're here today on the Syngenta MRI 162 corn seed litigation, which is both a mass action and a class action,
right,
involving Syngenta, which is a multinational corporation that specializes in herbicide, pesticide, and genetic seed modification sales.
Right. And the whole point behind these companies like Monsanto, Syngenta, was to produce a seed that would be more resistant to insects, resistant to drought, that sort of thing, correct?
Correct. Historically, farmers, otherwise known what's called a producer,
right,
they historically planted seeds that were the seeds that had been bred by just man and nature throughout the years.
right.
Beginning in the early 1990s, some corporations such as Dow, DuPont, Monsanto, Syngenta began using science to create modifications across multiple seed lines, one of them in the corn market.
There's a lot of controversy on that type of seed, because there's a lot of people that feel, well, we really don't know how it affects human beings or even livestock, that eat the seed. Your case, you represent thousands of farmers and non-producers, is that right?
Correct.
Why is there a case to begin with? What happened?
Well, one aspect of GMO discussion is obviously the public policy side of it. Mm-hmm. And that is just the benefit that society allegedly gets from it. In essence, that was sold as it'll reduce herbicides and pesticides and increase yields. And that is the whole foundation for the genetic modification industry. Mm-hmm. What you were talking about was more or less on the political and the social side of it. As a lawyer, I deal with the law. And in this particular case, what the allegations of law are that Syngenta, who is a seed manufacturer, created a seed modification in the corn industry, which is scientifically identified as MRI 162. The industry practice historically was that these seed manufacturers would seek out and get export approval from the producer's export markets before, in essence, selling the seed to the farmer. And this was historically done through the 90s, all through the early 2000s. This was the first instance where Syngenta placed a modified seed into the market without first gaining approval from a major export market, in this case, China.
But they said that they did have approval, or that it would soon be forthcoming, correct?
There's allegations in the lawsuit that both on their applications that they filed with the government and also statements that were made to both producers who bought and purchased the Viptera seed, that the approval process with China it was a done thing. It was right around the corner. It was going to be done within a matter of weeks. And we have evidence that certain producers relied on those statements, went ahead and purchased the seed and planted it. Unfortunately, it was only 1 to 2% of the seed planted in the United States in years 2011, 2012.
Mm-hmm. So these farmers, these corn producers, right, and non-producer related companies depended on these assumptions that Syngenta was publicly sending out there, correct? And they have lost money, haven't they?
Leading up to this incident, China in years 2010, 2011, 2012, they were exponentially increasing their purchasing of U.S. corn.
Yes.
Now, the one thing about what this is tied into is China is moving from a more and more, as their middle class develops, they are purchasing and wanting more food, which is historically fed by grains, and that would be pork, beef cattle, and poultry, chicken. As this market grows in China, the country itself was purchasing more and more corn to feed the cattle, the pigs, and the chickens that need to be fattened up for the process that comes after that.
When did they stop accepting this modified corn seed?
In November 2013, China put in place an entire ban on U.S. corn shipment. And the events that led up to this was China was showing itself to be a market that would pay a premium for U.S. corn. And what it is that these animals that consist of pork, beef, and poultry, you can in essence feed them one of three things. You can feed them corn, you can feed them what's called sorghum. In the Midwest, it's also referred to as milo, or barley. Sorghum, milo, and barley at this point were much cheaper than U.S. corn. But the China was 90% of the feed that they were buying for their agriculture was U.S. corn. So in 2011, 2012, the evidence will show that they were willing to pay a premium to get that. Why? U.S. corn it's reliable, it's consistent. It was the grade A gold standard for agricultural feed in the world.
Yeah.
And when this modification was put out into the market, which Syngenta did, they went ahead and sold it to U.S. farmers at a time when they knew that China had not yet approved this trait in shipments that came over to their country. In essence, what they were doing, they were risking that market at the risk of losing it for the U.S. corn farmer.
Now, moving forward, they now have accepted China has accepted this corn. Is that correct?
That is
currently.
Correct.
So there was a period of time, 2013 through 2015, when they rejected it. Is that correct?
In the historical timeline was they started to detect the way the U.S. corn market works is the farmer plants a seed, tends to it, and then in the fall harvest it, takes it down to a local grain elevator, sells it. At that point, it's commingled with farmers' corn from all through the county, all through the state.
Yeah.
And then at that point, the grain elevator operator will sell it on to companies like Cargill, ADM, who run the big shipments overseas. Mm-hmm. Now, China started to detect the MRI 162 trait that was in the U.S. corn supply in June.
How did they detect it? I'm just curious.
When I'm not a scientist, but my understanding of it is that when it comes to the ports in China, they have scientists who take samples of the shipments.
Okay.
They test it, and their testing will show all the traits, the genetic modifications inside that entire shipment. Mm-hmm. And that's when they started to detect the MRI 162 Syngenta gene trait that at that point was not an approved trait. Mm-hmm. And that goes back to Syngenta did not do the due diligence to get that application approved before they put that trait into the seed market.
But Syngenta knew this information and failed to relay it to the corn producers, correct?
Not only they failed to relay it, they in fact were somewhat not giving. They were given misinformation, and that's the allegations in the lawsuit. every farmer in America knows that it's not wise to plant a genetically modified seed, whether it's in corn, wheat, alfalfa, whatever, that has not been approved. There have been events like this in rice. It happened a decade ago. So farmers are well aware you don't plant a seed unless it's been accepted within all the major export markets. We have evidence, and there's allegations in the lawsuit, that Syngenta was telling its independent sales reps to tell farmers, hey, the application with China is right, it's done, it just needs to be signed off on.
When you say have evidence, documents?
Documents and depositions that have been taken in the case.
Okay. These people who gave the depositions, they work for the seed companies, yeah?
Some are employed by Syngenta, some are employed as independent seed representatives of Syngenta.
Okay, so they really put their jobs at risk when you testify against your employer or your contractor, right?
That would be my assumption.
So bring us up to date now on farmers who were unable to sell their seed. They sold it to the local aggregators here, but those local aggregators could not export it to China. What happened?
What happened in this particular case was Bunge, which is a North American grain elevator operator, and they're big. Bunge in 2012 started to get wind that this trait was in the marketplace and not approved.
Yeah.
They started to become concerned that they were going to be shipping corn with an unapproved trait to foreign markets that hadn't yet approved it.
Yeah.
Given that, Bunge started to place signs at their elevators telling farmers they were not willing to purchase Viptera corn that a farmer may have planted. Now, the evidence shows that this was only about 1 to 2% of corn planted in the U.S. these years.
Yes.
But what happens in corn and other crops is Mother Nature pollinates, and both corn and other, whether it's wheat or whatever, as the crop comes up, you get drift over onto other crops. So farmer A may be here planting Viptera, but they may get cross-pollination over onto his neighbor's farm. So his neighbor may be the unfortunate one that harvests the corn, goes in, sells it, it's detected, and he's told we're not buying it.
Right.
In this case, Syngenta filed the first lawsuit. They sued in federal court Bunge
Not accepting the corn.
for not accepting the corn in an attempt to get a federal judge to issue an injunction
Right.
to order them to buy the corn.
What happened?
The federal judge dismissed the case. Bunge had countersued for damages, and that's when the deposition and discovery process started in that litigation. From that litigation, trial lawyers such as myself started to get wind and review documents that we extrapolated from that and started to develop a campaign to educate the U.S. farmer, particularly corn farmer, about what had happened and their legal regress that they had against Syngenta.
Let's talk about that individual farmer. He can't sell the seed. There's a big mess here. He's lost money. What's he going to do? What did he do?
It's in this particular case, every U.S. corn producer has a potential and viable claim against Syngenta, and why that is because even farmers who did, and this is 99% of the farmers who do corn,
Yeah.
they were able to sell their corn down at the local elevator. But when China banned all U.S. corn shipments in November of 2013 over the presence of this unapproved trait, it took one of the fastest growing export markets that was consuming that U.S. corn away from the U.S. corn producer.
Yeah.
And as a result, everybody knows supply and demand. When you increase supply and you lower demand, your prices drop.
Right.
So highly credentialed economists who have looked at this have given opinions and are of the opinion that on average, it's cost the U.S. corn producer anywhere from around 25 cents to upwards of 50, 60 cents per bushel losses on the corn that they sold in years 13, 14.
Right. So, but this amounts to billions of dollars, doesn't it?
It's overall, the entire litigation involves claims against Syngenta involving billions of U.S. dollars.
Now, there was a pretty important case in September of 2015, right? You want to tell us a little bit about that case in Judge Lundstrom? What was decided in that case, which helps your clients?
In this particular case, what happened was I grew up in Kansas, South Kansas City, where I grew up in a community of about 5,000 people where 50% are people that commute up into Kansas City for white-collar jobs. 50% are farmers.
Yes.
And they're good people. They historically do not seek out litigation. The first thing that trial lawyers had to do, including myself, was educate farmers about this case. And I've never seen anything done like this, but in essence what happened is lawyers from Texas, Kansas City, Minneapolis, I would say all through 2014, there were thousands of town hall meetings held all across the Midwest inviting farmers to come get information on it. There was mailing information, there was news stories done. Mm-hmm. In essence, what happened is around over 50,000 producers over the course of the next 18 months hired and retained counsel such as myself and initiated litigation against Syngenta. Judge Lundstrom is the federal judge in Kansas City who has been appointed to oversee the federal litigation in what's called an MDL, multi-district litigation.
Right.
And the big unknown from day one on this case was because these are farmers who are not in privity of contract with Syngenta, does Syngenta owe them any legal duties?
Right.
And Syngenta was arguing that they owed no duty to the American farmer, that they have the right to, once they get USDA approval to sell the seed, they can sell it, whatever impact on the market, so be it. Syngenta's problem is we have evidence that the industry practice was that it's been adhered to for the past 2 decades was for the seed manufacturer to seek out and get those export market approvals in place legally. Mm. To get that legally binding certificate that says we as China will accept this in U.S. shipments. Mm-hmm. They didn't do that, and it's alleged that violated a duty that they owed to farmers.
Right.
Judge Lundstrom in September of 2015 ruled in favor of farmers and ruled that because they are inside of a mixed commodity market where they're so intertwined with what one individual does can affect another. Every farmer knows that if he does something on his land that affects his neighbor, that his neighbor can potentially have recourse against him.
Yes.
In essence, that's what Judge Lundstrom found. The Syngenta, inside this mixed commodity market, they have a special relationship with the growers. And because of that, they have a duty to act reasonable. And he found that there is a legal duty there. And this case is now moving forward toward trial.
Right.
And the jury will sit and hear the evidence presented and have to determine whether they feel Syngenta's actions were reasonable or not.
That's in federal court, correct?
There are over 50,000 individual producer trials filed and consolidated up in Minnesota State Court before Judge Sipkins up in Hennepin County, Minneapolis.
And I understand, if I'm reading this correctly, there's 4 growers and 1 grain elevator plaintiff that are up for bellwether trials in the Minnesota State Court, right, beginning in March next year?
April of next year.
As a result of their actions, are there farmers or non-producers involved in this industry that have gone out of business because they have money that they invested in their crop and they couldn't sell it?
I personally represent around 2,500 producers from over 20 states in this litigation.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say we've talked to almost every one of them.
Right.
And we've heard the full spectrum of stories about how it's impacted them.
Right.
There are, I'll tell you this, the growers that impacts most are the smaller growers.
Right.
The guys who have, and I should say ladies too, we have females that are producers. The growers that have 100, 200, 250 acres, those small family farms, which really make up the backbone of the U.S. farm industry, they in essence can't absorb losses as much as a farmer that's doing 3, 4, 5,000 acres.
This show is broadcast nationally, and there are people that are somewhat familiar with this lawsuit. If you're a farmer out there or a non-producer associated with farmers in this industry, what do you have to say to them to bring them up to speed so that they can file a claim? Is it too late to file a claim right now?
It's not too late to file a claim. Legally, where the case is at is there was over 50,000 producers. That is a farmer in essence. It's not only a farmer, but it's also landlords who own land who share in the crop along with the tenant farmer.
So they've lost revenue too?
Yes, because they're paid on a per bushel pricing.
Right.
So around over 50,000 of those individuals stepped up and filed individual suit. But with the certification of the nationwide class action, over 99% of the U.S. corn producer market is now represented by counsel.
Right.
So everyone has a right to, review the situation at hand. And
besides the individual farmers, the 60,000 plus farmers and non-producers, there's some big companies suing Syngenta too. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What are those companies and why are they suing them?
ADM and Cargill are the two largest. ADM and Cargill they operate the big ships that send those shipments over to China and export markets. In this particular case, I believe their damage claims are individually over $100 million each is what they're claiming, because it's obviously big business to carry those huge shipments of corn over to China and get over there and have them refused.
Right.
So they have independent counsel that is representing them, prosecuting those claims inside of a consolidated front against Syngenta.
In these types of lawsuits, when you get a client and you represent them, there's no money that they have to pay your law firm up front or anything. It's all based on results, isn't it?
From what I'm aware of, at least as to the to the farmer, the producers,
right,
everyone is being represented on a contingency fee relationship.
Right. You win, you successfully win a case. Not only do they get money, but also your firm earns a fee, right? Earns a fee.
Correct. And there have been, I know at this point there's over 300, 400, 500 law firms across the Midwest that are helping prosecute this case.
Yeah.
And it has been a huge effort and time-consuming effort by lawyers to move this case along.
I'm glad you're representing these people because, the bottom line is there are many people who have been hurt by Syngenta's actions. And I want to thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.